It's a sanctuary, a place of comfort and refuge from the outside world. We lock our doors, draw our curtains, and seek solace within its walls. But what happens when the very place meant to protect us becomes the source of our deepest fears? Home invasions, a violation of our personal space, and a shattering of our sense of security, tap into a primal fear that resides within us all. The thought of an intruder lurking in the shadows, unseen and unknown, is enough to send shivers down our spines. It's a fear that transcends age, gender, and background, uniting us in our vulnerability. The stories we are about to delve into explore this chilling fear, reminding us that no matter how safe we may feel, there's always a possibility of the unthinkable happening. We'll step into the shoes of ordinary people who find their lives upended by terrifying encounters within their own homes. Imagine the unsettling feeling of being watched, of sensing a presence that you can't quite place. A noise in the dead of night, a fleeting shadow in the corner of your eye. Are these figments of our imagination or something more sinister? The stories that follow are inspired by real-life accounts of home invasions, each more terrifying than the last. They delve into the psychological torment of the unknown, the gradual unraveling of sanity as victims grapple with the reality of an intruder in their midst. We'll witness the escalating events, the subtle signs that something is amiss, and the chilling realization that they are not alone. From vanishing shadows to unexplained occurrences, these stories will keep you on the edge of your seat, questioning every creak and groan in your own home. Prepare to be drawn into a world of suspense, where the line between reality and nightmare blurs, and the fear of the unknown takes hold. Lucy loved her little cottage on the outskirts of town. It was her sanctuary, a place where she could unwind after long days at the bookstore. The old house had its quirks, but she found comfort in its familiar creaks and groans. Lately, however, something felt off. A subtle shift in the atmosphere, a lingering unease that she couldn't shake. It started with small, easily dismissed incidents. An open window she could have sworn she'd closed. Lights left on when she distinctly remembered turning them off. Items misplaced, only to reappear in strange locations. She brushed it off as forgetfulness, the pressures of work clouding her mind. But deep down, a seed of doubt had been planted. One evening, as she was preparing dinner, she heard a noise from upstairs. A soft thud, like footsteps. Her heart pounded in her chest. She froze, listening intently. Silence. She chided herself for being paranoid. It was an old house, after all, prone to settling and groaning. But the incident left her feeling vulnerable, her senses on high alert. The unsettling events continued. One night, lying in bed, she heard the distinct sound of footsteps on the stairs. Slow, deliberate steps that sent chills down her spine. She held her breath, listening intently, her body rigid with fear. The footsteps stopped just outside her bedroom door. She lay there paralyzed, waiting for something to happen. Minutes ticked by, each one an eternity. Just when her fear reached its peak, she heard the footsteps retreat, slowly fading into the silence of the house. She didn't dare move, didn't dare breathe, until the first rays of dawn peeked through the curtains. Exhausted and terrified, she finally allowed herself to believe it was just her imagination playing tricks on her. But the following night, it happened again. This time she saw it. A fleeting glimpse of a figure standing at the foot of her bed. A tall, shadowy figure, barely visible in the darkness. She squeezed her eyes shut, willing it to be a dream, her heart pounding in her ears. When she dared to open her eyes again, it was gone. Driven to the brink by fear and unable to ignore the terrifying reality confronting her, Lucy knew she had to take action. She needed proof, something tangible to validate her sanity. Desperation fueled her resolve, and she decided to install security cameras throughout her home. She meticulously placed them in strategic locations, hoping to capture whatever was tormenting her. Night after night, she lay awake, her eyes glued to the monitor, her body trembling with anticipation and dread. The footage from the first few nights revealed nothing out of the ordinary, just the usual creaks and groans of an old house settling. But on the fourth night, her blood ran cold. At precisely 3 a.m., a figure materialized from beneath her bed. The figure, cloaked in darkness, was difficult to make out clearly, but it was undoubtedly human in form. It stood there, motionless, for what felt like an eternity, its gaze fixed on her sleeping form. Then, as silently as it appeared, it slipped back into the shadows beneath the bed. Every night, the same chilling pattern repeated. The figure would emerge from under her bed, watch her sleep, and disappear before dawn. The realization that someone had been secretly sharing her bed, watching her sleep night after night, filled Lucy with a bone-chilling terror she had never known. Fear gnawed at her sanity, pushing her to the edge. She knew she couldn't live like this, couldn't bear another night of silent observation. She had to confront her tormentor, to reclaim her sense of safety and sanity. One night, mustering every ounce of courage, she devised a plan. She lay in bed, pretending to sleep, her heart pounding in her chest. As the clock struck 3 a.m., she heard the familiar sound of movement beneath her. This time, she wouldn't cower in fear. She would fight back. With a surge of adrenaline, she flipped on the bedside lamp and lunged for the light switch, ready to face her tormentor. But as the room flooded with light, she was met with an emptiness that was more terrifying than the presence she had anticipated. The figure was gone, vanished without a trace. She tore through the house, her heart racing, her mind reeling, but there was no sign of the intruder. The events of that night shattered Lucy's last shred of composure. She realized that the figure, the unseen observer, had burrowed deeper than just beneath her bed. It had invaded her mind, her sanctuary, her very being. She knew she could never feel safe in her own home again, not while the shadow of doubt and fear lingered in every corner. That very night, she packed a bag, abandoning the home that had once been her haven. As she drove away, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. A quick glance in the rearview mirror revealed nothing unusual, yet the sensation persisted. Later, as she reviewed the security footage one last time, her blood ran cold. The camera positioned outside her bedroom window captured her hasty departure. But just as her car disappeared down the road, a dark figure emerged from the shadows, its gaze fixed on her empty home. The figure lingered for a moment, as if savoring its victory, before melting back into the darkness, leaving behind a chilling question. Who was the real prisoner, and who was the captor? David, a meticulous architect, took pride in his orderly life and the quiet solitude of his Victorian-era home. The house, with its creaking floorboards and antique charm, had been in his family for generations, each corner imbued with a sense of history and familiarity. Lately, however, that familiarity had begun to unravel, replaced by a growing unease that gnawed at the edges of his carefully constructed world. It started with small, seemingly insignificant incidents, objects misplaced, only to be found in illogical locations, faint, unfamiliar sounds emanating from the walls at odd hours. He dismissed them as mere eccentricities of an aging house, the inevitable settling of a structure that had weathered countless storms. But deep down, a nagging suspicion lingered. a disquieting feeling that something was amiss. One evening, as he was organizing his tools in the basement, he stumbled upon a loose floorboard. Curiosity piqued, he carefully pried it open, revealing a small, dusty space beneath. As he reached in to investigate, his fingers brushed against something cold and hard. He pulled out a small, tarnished locket, its intricate design barely visible beneath layers of grime. It was an unsettling discovery, one that hinted at a hidden past and secrets buried within the walls of his ancestral home. As the days turned into weeks, the strange occurrences intensified. The faint noises he had initially dismissed as the house settling grew more distinct, more purposeful. Whispers, rustling sounds, and the heavy thud of footsteps seemed to emanate from the walls themselves, following him from room to room. He tried to rationalize them, to attribute them to faulty wiring or plumbing, but the explanations rang hollow even to his own ears. Sleep became an elusive luxury, punctuated by nightmares of unseen presences and the constant fear of waking to find something or someone lurking in the shadows of his room. He found himself talking to himself, trying to fill the oppressive silence with the sound of his own voice, seeking solace in the familiar cadence of his thoughts. One particularly unsettling night, as he lay in bed, his mind racing with unanswered questions, he heard a soft scratching sound coming from the ceiling, directly above his head. It was a slow, deliberate scraping, like fingernails dragging across wood. He froze, his breath caught in his throat, his body tensed with anticipation. The scratching continued for what felt like an eternity, then abruptly stopped, leaving him in a silence that was even more terrifying than the sound itself. Driven by fear, David resolved to uncover the source of the disturbances plaguing his home. He meticulously inspected every nook and cranny, searching for signs of an intruder. But his efforts proved futile, yielding nothing but dead ends. One evening, he noticed something out of place. A small pile of dust lay on the kitchen floor, beneath the attic door. He hadn't been up there in months. A shiver ran down his spine as he realized the dust pile was too deliberate. His heart pounding, he grabbed a flashlight and a heavy iron poker. Taking a deep breath, he slowly pushed open the attic door. The air grew heavy, thick with the smell of dust and decay. As he shone the flashlight beam into the darkness, it cut through the thick dust motes, dancing in the single ray of light filtering through a small, cobweb-covered window. The attic, a cavernous space cluttered with forgotten furniture and shrouded in an eerie silence, seemed to hold its breath. He cautiously made his way deeper into the room, his footsteps echoing on the wooden floorboards. He examined every corner, his heart pounding with a mixture of dread and morbid curiosity. As he rounded a towering stack of old suitcases, he noticed something that made his blood run cold. In the far corner of the attic, beneath the dim glow of the single light bulb, lay a makeshift bed. A blanket, carefully folded, rested atop a pile of old clothes and blankets. Beside the bed, a half-eaten sandwich sat on a plate, crumbs scattered around it. The realization struck him like a physical blow. Someone had been living in his attic. David stood frozen, his mind reeling from the horrifying discovery. He knew he had to leave, to call for help, but his feet felt rooted to the spot. As he took a step closer, his flashlight illuminated something else, a small framed photograph. He cautiously reached out, his fingers brushing against the cold glass. As he brought the photograph closer, his breath caught in his throat. The photograph was faded with age, but the image was still clear. A young boy, no more than 8 or 9, standing in front of a familiar house. His house. The boy's eyes, dark and intense, seemed to bore into David's soul. The boy's face held a haunting resemblance to his own. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks. The boy in the photograph was him. But how was that possible? And what did it all mean? As he stood there, paralyzed by fear, he heard a soft noise behind him. A slow, deliberate creaking of floorboards, coming closer. He whirled around, his heart pounding, his flashlight frantically searching the darkness. But there was nothing there. Only the oppressive silence, and the chilling certainty that he was not alone. The Harper family, a picture of suburban tranquility, found their world turned upside down by a series of unsettling events that began subtly, like a whisper in the dead of night. John and Mary, high school sweethearts who built a life together, had always felt safe and secure within the walls of their cozy two-story home. Their 2 children, 10-year-old Emily and 8-year-old Ethan, filled the house with laughter and joy, their carefree spirits a constant reminder of the preciousness of family. But a palpable tension began to permeate their once happy home, a sense of unease that settled over them like a shroud. It started with small, easily dismissed occurrences. A door left ajar, a flickering light, the unsettling feeling of being watched. They initially attributed it to forgetfulness, faulty wiring, or simply their imaginations running wild. But as the incidents escalated, so too did their fear, transforming their haven into a prison of paranoia. One evening, as they gathered for their usual family dinner, the phone rang, shattering the comfortable silence. John reached for it, but the caller hung up before he could answer. Such calls became a nightly occurrence, always at precisely 8 p.m., the ringing a jarring reminder that their privacy had been invaded, their sense of security breached. Fear, like a virus, began to infect their lives, poisoning their relationships and turning their dreams into nightmares. Section 2. The Haunting Hour. As the days turned into weeks, the strange occurrences took on a sinister pattern, always centered around the witching hour, midnight. It was as if an unseen entity, bound by some malevolent timetable, had marked their home as its territory, their lives as its plaything. The children, their innocent eyes reflecting the growing terror in their parents' faces, began to report seeing shadows moving in the hallway, hearing whispers in the dead of night. One night, Emily woke up screaming, her small body trembling uncontrollably. She claimed a figure, tall and shadowy, had been standing over her bed, its face obscured by the darkness. John and Mary tried to comfort her, to assure her it was just a bad dream. But deep down, a seed of doubt had been planted. They too had begun to notice subtle changes in their home, a coldness that permeated the air, a feeling of being watched, even when they were alone. The once comforting sounds of their old house settling now filled them with dread. Every creak of the floorboards, every groan of the pipes, sent their hearts racing, their minds conjuring up images of unseen intruders lurking in the shadows. Sleep became a luxury they could no longer afford, their nights spent huddled together, listening intently to every sound, every rustle, every sigh of the wind. Section 3. Clues in the Silence. Determined to protect his family, John installed security cameras, their cold, unblinking eyes watching over every corner of their home. He checked the footage each morning, searching for a rational explanation for the terrifying events. But the cameras revealed nothing out of the ordinary, only the mundane activities of a family trying to maintain normalcy. Yet, the strange occurrences continued, mocking their attempts to capture them on film. Small objects would be found moved, their positions subtly altered. Drawings, seemingly done by a child's hand, would appear on the walls, depicting grotesque figures. The silence of their home, once comforting, now pulsed with a malevolent presence feeding on their fear. One morning, Mary discovered a single white rose on the kitchen counter, its petals still damp with dew. There was no note, no indication of who had left it or how they had gained entry. The rose, a symbol of love and purity, felt like a cruel taunt amidst the terror gripping their lives. John, worried and frustrated, tried to dismiss it as a prank, but Mary felt it was a chilling reminder that they were being watched. Section 1. The Enduring Scars of Intrusion. These stories, while fictionalized, reflect a chilling reality that haunts countless individuals and families every year. Home invasions, regardless of whether they involve physical violence, leave enduring scars on their victims. The violation of one's personal space, the shattering of security, can have a profound and lasting impact on their mental and emotional well-being. The fear that permeated Lucy's, David's, and the Harper family's lives serves as a stark reminder of the vulnerability we all share. It underscores the chilling reality that even in the supposed safety of our homes, we are not immune to the darkness that lurks in the shadows, both real and imagined. The stories highlight the insidious nature of fear, how it can creep in slowly, taking root in the fertile ground of uncertainty and doubt. A noise in the night, an object out of place, a fleeting glimpse of a shadow. These seemingly insignificant occurrences can quickly escalate, transforming our homes from havens of peace into prisons of paranoia. Section 2. Beyond the Shadows. While these tales focus on the terrifying experiences of home invasions, they also invite us to look beyond the immediate fear and consider the broader implications. What drives individuals to invade the sanctity of another's home? Is it desperation, a thirst for power, or a twisted sense of pleasure derived from instilling fear in others? The stories serve as a reminder that evil often wears a human face, that the monsters we fear are not always mythical creatures lurking in the shadows, but ordinary people capable of extraordinary cruelty. They challenge us to confront the uncomfortable truth that darkness resides within us all, and it is only through vigilance, empathy, and a commitment to creating a safer world that we can hope to keep it at bay. As we lock our doors and turn on our security systems, let us not forget the importance of looking out for one another, of fostering a sense of community where fear is replaced by compassion, and where the sanctity of our homes is respected and protected. For in the end, it is not the shadows we should fear, but the darkness that resides within the human heart.